And we are recording with Mr. Larry Johnson on Monday, October 23rd, 2023 at 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Mr. Johnson's been on here once before with Andrei Martyanov, and I'm sure I'm butchering his name as I always do.
No, you said
Guys,
it right.
all right, fair enough. I told a friend last night I'm having Larry Johnson on. He goes, the basketball player? I was like, that's Larry Bird, you uneducated swine.
No. The grandmama from New York Knicks.
Yeah. Wait, really?
Remember? Yeah, it was great. Larry Johnson. He was a 6'8" forward, black. And so I always tell people I'm like him, only shorter, fatter, whiter, and older.
But aside from that, identical. But the funny
And
thing is,
you got the other Larry Johnson, who was a running back at Penn State and then went on and played for the Kansas City Chiefs. So it was a good name to have at CIA. They didn't have to give me a cover name. My name was already a cover name.
Yeah. Oh, you Larry Johnson. Yeah, no, I'm Tommy Carrigan. There's no other, there's nothing. It's just me. Actually, my friend pointed out last night, my friend Drew pointed out, I go, that's Larry. I was like, that's Larry Bird, you dumb fuck. And he goes, there probably is a Larry Johnson basketball player. And I was like, you're probably right. And clearly I just was proven wrong. Guys, if you go in the description, you can find the link to his website, Sonar21, and his Substack and his Patreon. I'm going to rudely post the live link, but Mr. Johnson, real quick, could you please introduce yourself, and then we can jump into anything. And like I just said to you beforehand, kind of interested in the Chinese warships development, but we can go any which way with it.
Sure. I have a multi-layered background. I worked 4 years at the Central Intelligence Agency, 4 years at the Office of the Coordinator for Counterterrorism at State Department, where I handled transportation security, anti-terrorism assistance training, worked closely with the FBI on overseas investigations, and with the U.S. military special operations. After that, formed a consulting company and spent 24 years doing scripting terrorism exercises for U.S. military special operations forces, as well as conducting financial money laundering investigations overseas. So pretty diverse background. What I bring to the table is I've worked with the CIA on both the operations and the analytical side. I've worked with the FBI. I've worked with the National Security Agency. I've worked with the U.S. military, all of its top tier units. So I sort of, I'm one of the few that has a good broad picture of how the whole orchestra works.
Okay. As someone kind of with your experience, how do I word this? I've interviewed, some Delta Force guys, some multiple CIA ground branch guys. They all have a very calm demeanor about them. And you start to, I think Mark Bowden's Black Hawk Down, he always talks about the Rangers, freaking out, and then all the Delta guys would just be cool as cucumbers, just kind of like, hey, like, calm your tits, act like you've been here before, be cool. And they don't necessarily lose their minds when the bullets start flying, which I can't speak to. I've never served, but the analogy serves. So when you see Russia going into Ukraine, Hamas declaring the 9 trillionth holy war on Israel, or now, as I just said, the Chinese warships heading over to the Persian Gulf. We have the two carrier groups in the Mediterranean Sea, the Eisenhower and Ford. Do you kind of look at the average guy banging the drums and saying it's World War III, and are you like, calm down, like, act like you've been here before? Or
no,
do you look at it and go, nah, it's getting hairy?
Yeah, no, now's the time to run around screaming with your hair on fire. This is as dangerous as it gets. The United States, I try to write at my blog and take it right down the middle. And I've in just the last couple of weeks, I've lost some friends who are Jewish, who just, for whatever reason, they've cut off contact with me. They don't want to hear from me because they can't handle the truth. They don't want to admit the reality that it's not that Israel's all in the right, the Palestinians are all in the evil. There's a middle ground. And then just today, I got a message informing me that I'm just a Jew lover and I'm pandering to Israel. So, both sides are angry with me, which is fine. That means I'm calling it as straight as I can. And part of what our real problem is here in the United States, the level of propaganda that's being perpetrated and fed to the American people about the Middle East, which again, it portrays Israel as this poor, beleaguered country that's just been minding its own business, and all of these hateful, evil Palestinians are just trying to kill them because all they want to do is live at peace. That's not the story. That's not the truth. And by the same token, not all Israelis are these, people who want to exterminate the Palestinians. So you try to bring some balance to it. And my favorite is Iran, the greatest terrorist nation on earth. When you sit people down and say, okay, let's try to explain this. Why do you think the Iranians don't like us? And then some of you may get an American say, well, they don't like us for our freedom and our democracy. And I go, let's try another way. How about we overthrew a democratically elected government in Iran, a guy named Mossadegh, back in 1953, tossed him out. He's replaced with the Shah. The Shah then was trained by his security personnel, trained by CIA and other U.S. military entities. And they carried out a wide variety of human rights violations on their own population, to the point that it ginned up this Islamic revolution that came in under the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, I was in college, just coming out of college at that time, and I remember the anger in the United States directed at Iran. How dare they take our hostages? Well, what most Americans, I'd say 95%, maybe 98%, don't know, is even in the aftermath, when Iran took our hostages, guess who the United States was selling weapons to? Iran. So we were selling weapons to Iran up through 1988. It was being done through a cutout. Our cutout was a country called Israel. Israel was selling weapons to Iran specifically to help them fight a war against Iraq. And during that time frame, the United States Embassy was blown up in Beirut, Lebanon in October 83. Mm-hmm. The Marine Barracks was blown up a few months earlier in April of 83. All because the United States had been throwing shells into the Bekaa Valley and Hezbollah punched back. And yet, during all those terrorist attacks where Iranian-backed groups were attacking the United States, we continued to sell and allow weapons to be transferred to Iran, including during the what was known as Iran-Contra. And by the way, we also were supplying Iraq with weapons and technology that was used to make chemical weapons that they were using against the Iranians. So just maybe there's a possibility that Iran not liking the United States may have something to do with our own actions. Just throwing it out there. Oh, and over the last 20 years, there have been frequent assassinations inside Iran of nuclear scientists. Mm-hmm. The suspicion is those have been carried out by a joint operation through the United States and Israel. And the United States took a group that was called the Mujahideen al-Khalq, MEK, took them off the terrorism list, decided that they were okay. Why? Because they were attacking Iran. So my point in all of this is the American public likes to look at these events, what's unfolding right now, through just a very narrow lens in terms of what's happened in the last 6 months. And they don't have any sense of the history or the past. This is, what's going on between Iran and the United States is like an ugly divorce between a couple that they once loved each other and now they hate each other and want to see each other burn in hell.
Mm. Yeah, I always the one thing I always think about is Kermit Roosevelt, 1053. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that name always just sticks. Kermit Roosevelt. It's just they use circus strongmen. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But no, I mean, and it's such a peculiar thing to think about because of how much of it's classified, right? If all 1,365 episodes are out. If you see blowback against me, you could probably go and find the episode that I said something. But when it's classified, it is possible to say to the American people they hate us. You don't need to know why. You can't know why. It's classified. If somebody told you why, they'd go to jail. So all we see is, they attacked us because of our freedom. They're doing this because they hate the Israelis. And what you said about, hatred being levied at you from all sides, that means you're going it down the center. Um, I'm reading a book about Woodrow Wilson right now that just seems not to end. But he did have a good line about like the Treaty of Versailles or something. And he's telling his wife, he goes, well, everyone is very upset. Everyone's angry, and a lot of people are just, no one wants to talk, which means it's a good treaty because everyone's
Yeah,
pissed
yeah,
off, right? That means
yeah,
it's down the
yeah.
center. And it is never that easy, right? You can never say it's all this or all that. If you're being told that, if it's too perfect, if it's rah rah, they're evil and they're not. I grew up in New England, right? So every Yankees fan must be an asshole and a terrible person. Well, the hard part is half my family's from New York, so it's like I
Yeah.
I see that and it's like, no, they're not. That's just up here, but down there, they just have different accents. So it's never that easy. If it's served up so perfectly, it can't possibly be that easy.
Right, right.
So that all being said, and this is something I always wrestle with, is is the world just a zero sum game? And do you have to look at it and go, yeah, they are mad at us because we've been fucking around. This is blowback, but it's us or them. And I don't know if that's more of
Well,
a philosophical question, but
uh, I I th- I think this whole Hamas operation started October 7th, was planned as part of a broader strategy to sort of suck the United States into conflict in the Middle East that will weaken, if not destroy us. I think it's on that scale because um, when you look at Hamas operations over the last 20 years, they've never pulled off anything like they did on October 7th.
no.
Usually they're firing rockets into Israel. And these rockets were not precision guided munitions. Rarely would they cause any kind of casualties at all in Israel, and even didn't cause major property damage. You'd think that somebody's firing a rocket of any significance, that it'd be leveling city blocks, it'd be killing dozens, if not hundreds, of Israelis. Well, that hasn't been happening. And I can show you a couple of news reports where, like, the Hamas fired 34 rockets, and then Israel launched some bombing strikes, and nobody on either side was killed. So it's like, they're not aiming properly, or they don't know what they're hitting. But on October 7th, Hamas attacked at multiple locations, hitting Israeli military bases, killing some very elite personnel with some of like the equivalent of Delta Force, SEAL Team 6 for Israel.
Sire at Makal.
Yeah. So now they also, carried out these war crimes, attacking civilians. And, we got to call it what it is. And, that's where, Hamas was just stupid, because if they had limited themselves to just attacking the military targets and killing the Israeli soldiers and who are wearing uniforms and carrying firearms, the world would have been oppressed. But as a consequence of killing the civilians, particularly the kids at the rave, and some
Yeah,
come back and said, well, some of those were killed by Israelis. Well, that may be true, but there was still a Hamas attack on that location, and it was not a military target.
yeah.
So, the one rule I think has to apply across the board is for both Israel and Hamas, you don't attack civilians. And that's one of the crazy things that Hamas does. They just launch those rockets. They have no idea who it's going to hit. Well, that's not responsible. That's stupid as far as a terrorist attack and method. You want to make sure you get some bang for your buck, and know that you're going to, either weaken a capability or hurt them in a critical area. But just randomly firing rockets into the sky and hoping they land somewhere is just, completely feckless.
Well, I mean, it is terror, I guess, by definition, right? Is to terror. You don't know where it's going. You don't know where it's hitting.
Well, I think, I think that whole term terrorism has just it's got so overused. It's just,
it
it's a
means nothing.
pejorative.
It means nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's being called a racist now. It's like, what does that mean? It means I disagreed with you, and it is. Yeah, I mean, you really can't even pretend to have a rational argument about, well, why did this happen when you go mow down 260 kids at a rave and then you upload video. That's the lawyer going like, dude, I don't know if I can help you on this one, Mr. Carrigan. We can do this, that, and the other thing, but when you said this on camera, it's a little harder. And the guy I had on last or 2 weeks ago, Joe Tedai, who's in CIA ground branch, that's the one thing he pointed out. He goes, unfunded terror looks like a guy running around a London subway with a knife or pot shot rockets. And he goes, this, like Siret based off SAS and the motto, who dares wins. He goes, they dared, but not only did they dare, he goes, you have to respect it for what it was. It was funded and it was planned.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so could you maybe touch on that more about, is that more evidence to it's there to pull us in? And then kind of a second part to it is pull us in and destroy us. How is that any different than global war on terror? Or is it not? Is it just part two?
Yeah. So let me first start with this definition of terrorism, which is basically it's political violence directed against a person or something that's associated with the government to achieve a political objective. All right. So you're from Massachusetts, right?
New Hampshire, close enough. They're all assholes.
New Hampshire, yeah. My business partner lives in Worcester. Wicked smart.
Yeah.
The
worst.
So the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah.
What did they do with the British official? They tarred and feathered him, right?
Yeah.
So what does tarring and feathering entail? Tarring means you're pouring boiling oil over somebody's skin.
Ice.
Have you ever poured boiling oil or tar on your skin? It doesn't just burn. It causes second, third degree burns. Then with the feathers on top of it, it'll kill you.
Sepsis, yeah.
Guess what? That's called, by our definition, terrorism.
Yeah.
So America was founded on terrorism.
Yeah.
So we need to get a life and recognize, terrorism really is when you have people who are weak, that don't have conventional military force, and they're trying to figure out a way to fight back. They don't fight fair.
Yeah.
So
ambush the redcoats.
That's so what you have to pay attention to is when you see these groups like start off like Hamas that were weak and that were launching these rockets and God knows where they're going to land, trying to an occasional kidnapping, maybe a drive-by shooting. Yeah, that we call that terrorism because it makes people feel less secure, but it's such an infrequent act. It's not that common. But now what we've seen is with this operation that just as in 2006, when Hezbollah fought the Israelis to a standstill in southern Lebanon, in fact, some would say that they beat them. Hezbollah had undergone a transformation from what it was in the 1980s to then 2006. It was actually a real army using real tactics with uniforms, with upgraded weapons and munitions. And that's what Hamas demonstrated on October 7th. And I think the calculation was that Israel would retaliate in such a way that they would kill so many civilians that it would evoke outrage in both not only the Muslim world, but the Arab world and the nations outside of that in the global South. And that's exactly what has happened. Hezbollah has a consequential military force. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands they have, but they've got a significant number that would overwhelm Israel if they decide to go to war. And then if the Israelis are foolish enough to go into the Gaza Strip to try to exterminate Hamas, I think they're going to find themselves in for a long, bloody fight that's going to inflict significant casualties on Israel and the Israeli Defense Forces, and may or may not achieve that objective of getting rid of Hamas. What we've seen, what makes this current one so worrisome and unusual, is I have never seen the Arab Muslim world united as it is now. On behalf of the Palestinian people. They're not really doing it so much for Hamas, but over the years, for example, the Egyptians hated Hamas because they sort of Hamas's ancestors as being the ones responsible for murdering Anwar Sadat back in 1981. Saudi Arabia was not at all enamored of Hamas. Turkey, similar thing. But now you've got all three, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, talking about we've got to have a one-state solution. There has to be a ceasefire. You've got Iran activating and reportedly has positioned missiles that could strike inside Israel. And if they do that, Israel will try to strike back at Iran. So, and then when you've got the two carrier battle groups plus a couple of Marine MEUs, the Marine Expeditionary Units, steaming into the region, and I've told 4 submarines that are in the region. It's like, what are these people thinking? We're trying to intimidate the Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Iraq, and I don't think I think they've reached the point where they don't care, or they're so angry and fed up that they're not going to be intimidated. And it really puts the United States in a very vulnerable position. If Iran does, I think, have some courtesy of Russia, some hypersonic missiles or some anti-ship missiles at a minimum, if they take those to Lebanon and fire those from Lebanon at U.S. ships and sink a carrier, good Lord. Yeah. There's going to be demands for blood and retaliation. And that's where this thing gets, that's where you've thrown the match on the kindling and it kicks off a big ass fire. And only this time it could be a nuclear fire. So it's just, that's why I say we're watching a unity on the side of the Arab Muslim world, and Israel keeps feeding that unity. Every day that images come out of dead Palestinian children, of women with mangled bodies, it inflames the Arab Muslim world. Now, the Israelis are telling, well, look what Hamas did. Yeah, Hamas did some terrible things 2 weeks ago, but that's 2 weeks ago. They're not doing it on a daily basis, and certainly not doing it on the scale of what Israel's doing to Palestine. So this is, as I said, this thing is just, it's come to a boil, and it's going to boil over, I fear.
Jesus. Yeah, to go back, no, I'm glad you touched on terrorism. I've always hated the definition of terrorism, and I don't mean that in some hippie bullshit sense. I just mean in terms of a term. It's horseshit. It's like,
well, it's meaningless.
Well, it's like if we used it. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just say it's in the eye of the beholder. Basically, yeah. If you're with us and you're doing it, it's okay. Yeah. If you're against us and they're doing it, that's terrorism.
But it's also just it's like if we had a term for I don't know, doing something to get laid, right? Sure, you'd have the most overt things, like I go up to a girl at a bar and buy her a drink. What about other stuff? Why'd I get a haircut? Why'd I shave today? Why do I brush my teeth every day? I think it's to be presentable to do the podcast. Well, I'm not trying to impress Larry. All right. Well, what do you do? Well, it's at the end of the day, it's like, well, that's what moves society forward, right? That's why you clean your house. That's why you get a nice car. It's so it can all be pulled back to that. And if it all pulls back to that, then nothing pulls back to it. It means nothing. But yeah, it's like when you're at the bar with some friends. Like I was a bouncer in college, and you'd always see your, friends get way too shit faced, and you go up to him and be like, hey man, like you're gonna get thrown out if you go fight that. I know you're angry at that guy. And he'd be like, well, he started it. He threw something at me, or whatever. And I'm like,
right,
you're not even wrong. I know he did. But I'm telling you, as the guy that works here, you're gonna get removed, man. And if it's not me, it's gonna be someone else who doesn't know you. And there is a point where they might go, I don't care. I've accepted that my night is over. I'm gonna get revenge. And then there's nothing you can really do about that. And it's easy when you're literally and figuratively sober. You can be like, all right, man. So on one hand, you can almost understand it. You go, yeah, they have nothing to lose. They don't care. But
Right.
then there's the bigger picture where it's not that you're getting kicked out of the bar, it's that this is kicking off war. And is it naive of us to try to so many times I would try to break things up peacefully. And then as I had worked there for months and years, you'd start to just step back and you'd see some other new bouncer doing that. And you'd be like, oh, you sweet summer child. It's like, they're going to fight. Just get out of the way. Just let it happen. And then when it's
Yeah.
over, we'll sort it out. Are we trying to sort out a drunken fight when the only rational thing to do is just to back up and let them go at it because they've been doing this since the dawn of time? It doesn't make it right.
Right.
But is that the rational response, or are we
Uh,
just sticking our
uh,
heads into a fight?
well, we are sticking our heads into a fight, and I like your analogy at the bar, because what you have right now are two sides that are totally intoxicated with rage.
Yeah, the
So
emotion,
it's all
shit face, screaming. Yeah.
it's all emotion, and each side believes that they have been aggrieved and are
Hmm.
offended, and have a full justification, and God's with them. And what's needed at that point is somebody both with a cooler head that can step in, separate them, get them to their respective corners and try to calm them down, and to stop doing stupid stuff. Because I think both Hamas and Israel have been doing stupid things to each other, which continue to inflame the situation. And the concern I have is for Israel in this, because Israel is picking a fight I don't think it can win, even with the backing of the United States. And that the United States, by investing itself so heavily in this, at the same time that it's overinvested in Ukraine. We can't even supply enough shells, artillery shells, to Ukraine. Now we're going to provide Israel with artillery shells some of which we actually took away from Israel. It's insane. I heard Lloyd Austin say, "Oh, we can walk and chew gum at the same time." I said, "The hell we can. We can't even afford the pack of gum to chew." That's the point.
When I it's I try not to fall into the trap of everything's being orchestrated, because that's never the case. Life is just far too chaotic. But when we're so overtly overextending ourselves, and I almost kind of and in a joking way, I almost kind of admire the Biden administration in that they're getting what Trump wanted without being the evil orange man, and that they're getting Europe to kind of pay their share of NATO. They're getting what Trump wants. It's almost kind of funny when I look at how extended we are, and then going into, starting to try to aid Israel as well. It almost looks like we're purposely depleting reserves
Mm-hmm.
as a means to get the world. I think it was back in May or June. It was like very quietly, but there was this meet like of all like the major arms manufacturing, I guess, CEOs in Europe, about standardizing calibers and standardizing shell productions, and degrees of tolerance, and all these things that look like the war drum's beating. And what better way to really get it going than to deplete reserves? Is there any rationale to that, or is that me projecting an orchestrating hand on something that might just be chaotic phenomena?
Uh, I think you can make a good case that it's orchestrated. It's not completely far fetched. Um, I can see, for example, Iran has been wanting to get revenge against the West for killing,
Yeah.
assassinating Soleimani.
Mhm.
the head of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So is it possible that they helped put this together with Hamas attacking, knowing that the attack from Hamas would unleash a furious response by Israel, and then at the same time having pre-prepared Hezbollah
Mhm.
and armed them so that at the appropriate moment they could come in from the north, and all of a sudden Israel is going to be caught literally between the dog and the fire plug. They're not going to be able to keep from getting wet, and would actually face a genuine existential threat. Tempted to be, they're tempted to want to use nuclear weapons. The problem still is you got many in the West that can't wait to fight Iran, and look, we we couldn't even handle Iraq with Kurdish and other Sunni tribesmen attacking us, and we ultimately pulled out, cut our losses and got out of there. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq, and Iran is a much more sophisticated, technologically advanced, developed country compared to Iraq. So any attempt to go in there to take control, to set things right, because we hear this nonsense, oh, we'll just drop bombs, we'll drop missiles. That's not, has never got it done in history. You always have to put boots on the ground. And that's where, I could see this entire plan, let's say that Iran was behind it and helped Hamas plan that operation, knowing Hamas would hurt Israel in a way that it hasn't been hurt ever, and then would face retaliation, but that retaliation would unite the world against the United States, and maybe the United States would be compelled or enticed or tempted to go insert forces, as it is inserting. At some point, we're going to have close to 12,000 troops between Army and Marines in the region, not to mention what's on the carrier battle group, the aircraft carrier that's accompanying destroyers and cruisers. So the United States is creating a real concentration of forces that, if they're hit and some of those are destroyed, it's going to directly impact on the prestige and standing of the United States in the world. That's why I've likened it a little bit to the Suez Canal crisis of 1956, when the Gamal Abdel Nasser seized the the Suez Canal and nationalized it. And the response was England, France, and Israel attacked Egypt, started a war with Egypt, and actually they won the military portion of it, but they lost the diplomatic portion. And out of that, the United Kingdom had to retreat. They had to give up what they had gained. It diminished them in a way that they've never recovered from. That was really sort of the final nail in the coffin of Britain as a global empire.
Is this as simple as, I mean, hyper complex, but is this also as simple as we're a war economy, and B, we are the waning, we are the hegemon, and instead of seeing us, wane entirely and quietly going into that good night, is this the hegemon going down swinging, and it manifests as, what's the one thing we offer, man? We got bombs and missiles, and what's the one thing the world needs right now? It's kind of convenient that it's popping off in Europe, popping off in the Middle East, and I would imagine, in all of my military genius, a matter of time before it's happening in the South China Sea and Taiwan. Yeah. It conveniently serves us.
Well, it's sort of I think the United States has become the Black Knight. Did you ever see Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Yeah, I don't remember much, but
so remember the Black Knight comes galloping up, and he's going to fight King Arthur.
Yeah.
And during the ensuing fight, first King Arthur lops off his left arm.
Oh yeah.
And then he lops off his right arm. And then the Black Knight goes, "It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah.
It's And so finally chops off both of his legs. And he'd say, "Come on, you coward, fight." Well, the United States is right now sort of in the position of that Black Knight.
Mm.
Since the start of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine, we've really put our nation's prestige on the line of being able to defeat Russia using Ukraine as a proxy. And that's turned out to be a lie. We can't do it. We don't have the wherewithal. Russia's too strong.
Mm.
And in the course of that, it's exposed the fact that the United States, despite all of its tough talk, can't deliver, and physically can't deliver enough artillery shells at the rate that Ukraine's firing them. So, it leaves Ukraine without adequate offensive capabilities. And the United States prestige has suffered with the rise of BRICS and other international organizations put together by Russia and China. So the movement away from the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency. Just last week or over the weekend, when Joe Biden flew to Israel, met with Netanyahu, and then was going to turn around and meet with the King of Jordan, with President of Egypt, Al-Sisi, and with Mahmoud Abbas. They blew him off. They said, "No, the meeting's not going to take place." And reportedly, they won't even take phone calls from Biden. We got nothing to say to you. So we've never seen this kind of, flipping the bird to America and say, "Hey, go pound sand," ever over the last, since Israel was founded in 1948, 75 years.
I can't help but think this all comes back to BRICS. I'm banned from Twitter as of a couple weeks ago, but I do remember, someone was posting about the rise of BRICS and the waning of the U.S. dollar. And I always have to clarify, when I say I think something will happen, it doesn't necessarily mean I think it's good. It just means I think it will.
Right.
If I'm watching the World Trade Center burning and I go, I think it's going to collapse, I clearly don't want it to collapse, but I think it's probably going to go down. I was like, no, we're not just going to let a replacement to the dollar happen. And I go, oh shucks, guys, we lost, right? This isn't a football game where we're losing and the clock's winding down. This is the global hedge, but it's the highest stakes there are. You're gonna go down swinging and firing, and there's nothing off limits. And like, man, if I'm, I was pre-med in college, and luckily I could go against my peers academically, but I was also probably the only like kid that got into medical school that was also like a weightlifting meathead. And I just remember always thinking, like, man, if worse comes to worse, like, I'm not gonna try to go up against like these Asian kids. I'm just gonna like start a fight. I'm just start like swinging, like, because that's where I can, right? I'm an Irish guy. Like,
right.
that's where I can work.
Right.
Yeah, man. If it seems like China's exporting for all of its flaws, education or the Belt and Road Initiative, and the BRICS is gonna surpass the U.S. dollar, and we can't meet them on that battlefield. I'm just gonna start. I'm just gonna sucker punch them. Doesn't make it right. It's what I think will happen. I can't help but feel like we're just throwing sucker punches.
Well, the other part of it is our what we say, our rhetoric.
Yeah.
We describe China as our enemy already.
Yeah.
Rick Scott has got a commercial up for his reelection next year, and he was referring to China as our enemy. Okay. Where has China physically attacked us? The only country I know of over the last 40 years, 50 years, that's launched a military attack on one of our naval ships was Israel with the USS Liberty.
Liberty, yeah, can't bring that up.
And North Korea too, with I think that was after the USS Liberty. China's never attacked us that way. How many countries has China invaded since 1979? The answer is none. 79 was their last invasion. They went into Vietnam fighting the Vietnamese because the Vietnamese had invaded Cambodia. And the Chinese lost that one. And, same thing with Russia. Russia has not been this frequent as the Soviet Union was, engaged in military misadventures around the world where they're Afghanistan or Angola or Central America. No, they've been just the opposite under Putin anyway. They've not engaged with foreign military adventures and always called for some sort of peaceful resolution. It's the United States. According to the Library of Congress, it's over 200 incidents of military interventions in other countries without their permission since 1991. So, we refuse to look in the mirror and recognize what we're doing, what we're responsible for in making this world not a more peaceful place, but a more chaotic place.
Yeah, and it's to before we get I'm sure it's already happening, but before we get the commenters calling us America hating bastards, I tend to think it's probably the most patriotic thing you can do, to look in the mirror and get right. That's what the real friend does, right? The real friend tells you, like, hey, dude, you're being an asshole, you're drinking way too much, you totaled your car, everyone else said that you're fine, like, you're clearly not. Like, I mean, you can hate me, but I'm gonna look out for you. I tend to look at it that way. It just popped into my head to cycle it back to what you said earlier. A war that Israel might not survive, even with the backing of the United States. Can you expand that? Do you mean, what all do you mean by
that? Yeah. So, under one scenario, let's say Hamas attacks in force, and say they bring 500,000 man army to the field, and they come in north from Lebanon and from Syria. So they're really attacking along two fronts, from the north and then the north west or northeast, excuse me. Well, Israel is unable to stop that. Let's say they get all the way to Jerusalem and take Jerusalem. What's Israel going to do? So at that point, you're looking at use nukes, kill themselves, looking out for an international UN intervention. And at that point, I don't think there's going to be a lot of sympathy for the Israelis. So, I mean, that's that's one thing that worries me. I could see that happening. And Israel, at the same time, if it's threatened with doing that, it will do something so extreme that it could, literally trigger a nuclear exchange. So, yeah.
Samson option. Isn't that
well, notice, excuse me for interrupting, but
no, go for it.
Pakistan the other day made an offer to Turkey. Say, hey, if you get into a fracas with Israel, we can provide you some nukes.
Now, in terms of the really zoomed out scale, and I've interviewed several times Richard Rhodes, author of Making the Atomic Bomb, and no one understands it better than him, but he tends to point out, in terms of annual deaths from war as both a percentage and I think gross number, it's been decreasing since 1945. Right? A polite society is an armed society. When everyone has a gun, you tend not to have breaking and entering. Kind of goes that way globally too, right? The Second Amendment globally is our deliverable thermonuclear warheads. And I'm not going to say they're good, but at the same time, I live in reality and understand that they exist. Is there, and everyone always thinks that we live in a different time. Throughout all of human history, it's now is different, and it never really is. With the advent of nuclear weapons, it really is different. Are we seeing as you look at it from August 1945 till now, it's going, sure, you have skirmishes and wars, but it's going down and down and down and down. Are we looking at the slow motion, just increasingly, or I guess decreasing amount of cataclysmic war? Because no one, unless you really are hell-bent on just death and destruction, you can't go all out. You cannot do total war. It is not an option. There is no one, even the most elite rich guys, none of them want to live in a fluorescent lit,
right. Right.
a HEPA filtered bunker. You can go to NORAD, you can go to Mount Weather, you could go to Raven, you could do all that. No one wants to.
No,
Is
that's true.
Are we
But
just
yeah, I think that's where we're headed, unfortunately, because it's the emotion that's taken over. It's not the clear thinking of rational people.
hmm,
And when you just, uh, I was with someone last night at a dinner who had been a career foreign service officer at state and had done time in Moscow. And we briefly touched upon the whole subject of Russia. And from her standpoint, even today, Russia's still a communist country and irredeemable. Well, I didn't get into it with her because I wanted to have a pleasant dinner. But that's crazy.
yeah.
And but it illustrates that she's not alone or unique in that, and she's certainly not an unintelligent person. She's very accomplished. But you've got people like that who have been or still are in the policy making positions at state and at the National Security Council and at the Central Intelligence Agency, at the Department of Defense. They're steering our policy in a direction of continued confrontation, with Israel, with the Palestinians, with the Ukrainians. You talk about the scale of people don't appreciate what has taken place in Ukraine. Do you realize? So now what you got? 11 months in 2022, or let's call it 10 months of actual warfare in 2022, and now we're coming up on month 20th, 10 months so far this
Hmm.
year. In that 20-month period, it's estimated well over 500,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed in action. So in World War II, the United States lost a grand total of 472,000
Yeah.
soldiers, sailors, Marine, airmen in both the Pacific and the European theaters.
Yeah.
So and that was over a 4.5 year period.
Yeah.
This is only two. So this is the level of carnage not seen since World War II. It's bloody and it's vicious. The United Kingdom lost 375,000, I believe, in World War II. Russia, or the Soviet Union, at the Battle of Stalingrad, in one battle, lost almost 750,000 troops. So, what again? My point is, the West has no concept
Of
of the Russian mentality as they approach these conflicts, what it means, and the same with the Palestinians and Hamas. They're not thinking in terms of what happened last year or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. They're harboring resentments and memories that go back centuries.
mm, yeah, it's didn't Russia lose 27 million in World War II?
Yeah.
There's no concept of that. That doesn't
Oh,
it's
we can't even relate.
no,
We can't even,
it's
even if we
it's
lost that
over,
many.
it's an order of magnitude
Yeah.
plus.
Yeah.
It's yeah, you can't it does. I don't know, I keep going back to Black Hawk Down, but in the movie where it's they capture the guy and they're talking to him and he's like General, you Arkansas white boys. He's like, you don't understand Africa. Like there is no
Yeah.
yesterday, there is no tomorrow. There's power today. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, you're sticking your head. You're the dumb bouncer like me. Hey guys, stop fighting. And then finally, after you work there for a year, you go, let them duke it out. This has been going forever.
Yeah.
It's But the difference is, and I don't was it Sagan or Feynman or whoever, nuclear war is two guys standing waist high in a room full of kerosene. One guy has 5 matches and the other has 4. The difference is you can't just let them duke it out because
Yeah.
the earth is soaked in gas and that they all have nukes. It's
Yeah.
hard to put that into perspective, and it's hard to relate to it or understand it. I mean, I would hope that this is the slow process of It's like when you watch like a time lapse of, I don't know, an icicle melting, or a time lapse of just leaves falling or the tree growing. I would hope that we're watching the slow 100-year process of relative world relative world peace in light of nuclear weapons, right? And if you ran the
Yeah,
simulation a million times, maybe you'd probably always come down to this. I would like to think we're watching the, I guess, creation of a multipolar world that's backed by nuclear weapons, that you really can't have a global empire anymore. But run that simulation enough times, there's a non-zero chance that it won't work. That this is
right.
one of the great bottlenecks of, the Fermi paradox of, where is everyone? Well, not everyone makes it through. And I don't know. I can't really rationalize like a peaceful ending to this.
That's my concern. I don't see an off ramp. They've the one possible off ramp is that China, Russia, India, South Africa, enough countries of the world are going to get together with Brazil and say, okay, this is going to stop,
Yeah.
and try to force Israel to stop as well. Um, and if the United States fights that, they may turn around and say, okay, just like you were with the bond surge job. All right, let them fight,
Yeah.
and we'll be there to pick up the pieces, because the one that's insisting on carrying on this fight is going to get be the loser,
Yeah.
and that's going to be Israel.
To Yeah, the USS Liberty. I think it's in one of James Bamford's book about the NSA. He has perhaps one of the best chapters on that. That's so fucked up. But do you think that there's any chance we're putting everyone over there, the two carrier groups? And this is obviously just wild speculation. Doesn't it kind of seem like we're just loading up the area for a
It, it
catastrophic attack?
yeah, no, it's very reminiscent of what we did in 1983. I mean, you weren't even
Uh,
born then, I think.
yeah, I was born
And
90.
yeah, so in 1983, the civil war in Lebanon had broken out, and Iranian-backed Hezbollah was sort of carrying the day. The Christian Druze were asking for help out of the West, so the United States deployed. We had a Marine team on the ground, over, I guess it was a battalion strength, so around 500 guys. And then you had, I think, a battalion size of French troops set nearby. And during that time frame, the United States decided, okay, we're going to get involved with the Civil War. We're going to fight on behalf of the Druze. So we started lobbing shells into the Bekaa Valley, and where the Hezbollah was based. And at this time, Hezbollah, I think, had also started taking Americans hostage. Um, I believe it was then that William Buckley had been kidnapped and
Mm,
killed. But as a result of that, Hamas retaliated against us for lobbing those shells, and killed 250 some odd Marines, and plus killed a bunch of French Marines at a similar attack that was close by. So that's I think we're setting up that sort of scenario here, where you got so much military presence in the Gulf or out there in the ocean, in the Med, that something could happen to one of them or more of them, and you're going to all of a sudden look at thousands of U.S. casualties in one day. Something, even in the war in Iraq, we weren't looking at. It took years to get thousands.
mm. Yeah, it does. It's not one I necessarily subscribe to, in that I just admittedly don't know enough about it. But right, it's the supposed idea that we loaded up Pearl Harbor with so many old ships and moored them next to
Right.
it. The whole idea of getting us pulled into the war, and it's the same concept, whether or not it's real or not, but the same concept of, yeah, we're putting our guy over there, right? You just putting it over there and like, well, I hope nothing gets hit. I hope you don't touch this. Yeah,
Well, there's, I mean, the hubris on our side. We really believe that we are, as military, the most powerful military nation in the world, and that, when Joe Biden said we're America, we can do anything. Well, no, we can't. Hell, if we could do anything, what happened in Afghanistan?
mm,
What happened in Iraq? Please. And what's happened in Ukraine? Again, if we can do anything, why aren't we doing the anything that makes us look like we're on top of the world?
mm. Is there any, and I know I keep throwing you I often do this where I kind of forget that the guest isn't God, and I'll just throw them with the most dense philosoph. And I'm like, tell me the meaning of life, and it's like, dude, what? But is there any reality to the notion, the romantic notion of just pulling back and defending your nation? Right, Smedley Butler. The military should be used to defend the coasts, the borders, and the
Yeah.
Constitution.
Yeah.
And Smedley ain't no hippie, but
Right.
is that a romantic notion? Do you pull back and create the Fortress America, but then does China run the world, and you let it go for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, and all of a sudden they're at an unstoppable powerhouse, and now all of a sudden your fortress isn't going to last? Is there any truth that, and let's just not say whatever, Fortress Canada, Fortress France, is there any legitimacy to that idea, or are we in a hyper connected world where you got to go out and play?
Well, we definitely have problems here at home that have to be addressed,
Oh yeah.
that are not being addressed, that are allowing to fester, and those provide sort of the foundation of the republic. You got to have an educated population. Number one, this republic depends upon public education, not seeing who's the most attractive in the transgender sex show. Okay. We've got a genuine plague of narcotics deaths from overdoses of fentanyl and others, killing more than 100,000 a year, and in the scheme of a $330 million 330 million population, we say, oh well, yeah, we can live without 100,000. That's just that makes us a sort of a cult of death. Our military is not sustainable at this current level, and the debt levels are just off the charts. But yet we continue to persist in this foreign intervention and making other battles overseas our problem, something that we need to get in the middle of. And it's, those are akin, if you've interviewed any police officers, the police always talk about the most dangerous call they get is not an armed bank robbery in progress. It's not a hostage situation. It's a husband and wife brawling. And they walk into the middle of this family brawl, and next thing you know, both of them turn on the cop and can shoot him or her and create some mayhem. And that's sort of what we're doing. We keep getting involved with all these overseas family brawls that really have nothing to do with us, but we make it have something to do with us because ultimately it helps justify what's now an $800 billion plus defense budget.
Or economy.
Yeah. And so we're so wedded to that our media will keep feeding us that steady diet of we have to intervene here, we have to intervene there. But one of the sort of unexpected outcomes of this war is it's completely taken the focus off Ukraine, and Ukraine realizes that their days are numbered now.
Yeah, Henry Kissinger, right? It is dangerous to be an enemy of the United States. It is fatal to be an ally.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad totally flexed on me last night. I don't think he even meant to, but I went to dinner with my parents. Obviously I do the podcast. My dad was in business forever, and he was talking about, Israel, Hamas, and he's like, I'll tell you what, when I got to go go to a dinner with years ago with Bibi Netanyahu. He's like, that's a guy when he speaks, you listen. He's like the only guy who had who could really grab your attention as much as that is Kissinger. I don't think he even meant to, but I'm not realizing like 20 hours later, I'm like, he definitely just totally like big dicked me at the entire concept of like interviewing people. Like he'd be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, when I was hanging out with Bibby, like, fuck, I might need to give him a call. Be like, what's that about? But and this is one idea I always kind of come back to is I was a biology major and I think about this the cell splitting, mitosis, meiosis, and when it's happening very slowly, and they're launching all not kind of launching, but there are all these fibers in between the two, and it's chaotic. And then it,
Right,
it
right,
splits, and that's the very basis for life. And
right,
if you just looked
right.
at a cell beforehand, you wouldn't know. It starts doubling up all the amount of material. It's almost becoming pregnant. Like, what is all this excess shit? And it looks like the end of the world if you zoomed in on that cell. But really, what it's doing is it's just dividing. I almost wonder if this is leading to the division that I mean, this is really zoomed out, but if this is the division that sort of pushes the bird out of the nest, is this what pushes the species to become multiplanetary? Is this the cell
Yeah.
dividing where you have to go? It's no longer a romantic notion. There's nuclear war.
Well, over the last 75 years, I've never seen this united a push to create a Palestinian state, independent Palestinian state,
Yeah.
and independent of Israel. So that's going to come, or the it's going to be involved. We'll have a big nasty war. There'll be carnage. It'll probably exceed what happened in World War II, which is horrific. So this is, like I said, this is not a good situation. That's why I keep trying to warn, trying to educate American listeners that
Yeah.
they've got to break out of this propaganda that's being fed to them about, Israel's, the Holy Crusaders on the justified
Mm.
crusade, and it's if we got to stand with them. I stand with Israel, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would say let's stand with humanity.
Mm. And I think the most important thing you can do really is just read history.
Yes. Yep.
World War II, anything you want. It really does. It's not just a cliche. It really does repeat. And the more you read, the more you. Um, I don't know if you can off the top of your head, or if you could email me, but I'd love to know if you have any book recommendations. Uh, you know,
Have you ever read? Where is it here? When Titans Clashed.
or no.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is written by David Glantz, and the co-author was Jonathan House. It's about the Soviet military and what they did to win World War II.
Hmm.
Because if you were raised in the United States and taught the history of World War II, basically, it was all America and our British allies, and the Russians played sort of a minor sub role, and all of that is a lie. It's just the opposite. The Soviets would have probably won World War II without us. It would have taken
Hmm.
them longer. But I've got a dear friend. He's a good guy, but he was a old retired naval officer, and he was recounting the words of Patton at the end of the movie from 1970, 72, where, yeah, you give me the tanks and I'm going to go kick those Soviets all the way back to Moscow. Well, the reality was that was crazy on the part of Patton. It would never have happened. If we'd put every American soldier available, we would have had a 1,000,000-man army trying to go up against a 2,000,000-man army. And the Soviets had more tanks. It was just insane. So, yeah, I recommend a book like that.
And Titans clashed.
When Titans Clashed, Glantz and House.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't. Yeah, man, you can't really talk shit to a group that throws 27 million into the fray.
Yeah.
I mean,
It,
shut up, put up or shut up. Like, hey, man, they've showed.
Also, I'm sure you've recommended it before, but Andrei Martyanov's book,
Mm.
Losing
Losing
Military
military
Supremacy.
supremacy. Yeah, no, that's a great one. It's another
Yeah.
sobering look. Yeah,
So if you
it's
read that, have a good foundation to understand what's so crazy about the current U.S. approach.
and I always recommend. It's probably my favorite. Raven Rock by Garrett Graff, all about the nuclear bunker system. Really, from I mean, the first kind of makeshift ones from FDR all the way through whatever's declassified from Obama or so. But the one takeaway I always get from it is just like, man, it really is absolutely unwinnable. You cannot win nuclear, even the most advanced,
Yeah.
best contingency plans. You cannot. I think Eisenhower said he was like, the only real plan we should have for nuclear war is start stockpiling tractors to bulldoze the irradiated American bodies out of the streets.
Hmm.
And that's from Dwight Eisenhower. That ain't from me.
Yeah.
That ain't. Yeah, no, it's like,
Yeah.
god damn. Um, but Mr. Johnson, let's wrap this one up. I told you I keep you for an hour, and I've kept you 6 minutes longer. I cannot be trusted. But
You're all right.
thank you, sir. Guys, please go into the description. Please go to the website. Please go to his Substack, his Patreon, all that good stuff. And yeah, man, don't be a stranger. I'd love to have you on again sometime.
I'm happy to do so. I appreciate the invite and look forward
Yeah,
to doing it again.
that was fun, man. I enjoyed that. Terrifying, sobering, and I think what you said is maybe the most important takeaway. If everyone hates you, you've probably got a middle sober-minded take on what's going on.
Right.
That's a good takeaway for life. If everyone's pissed off, then it means you're probably somewhere near the truth.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's my goal.
That's the way to go. All right. Well, hey, Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for your time, sir. Guys,
All right,
please go
Tommy.
check him
Always
out.
a
Please go
pleasure.
support him. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Till next time. Thank you.